Good afternoon. I'm Christina Ruffini, live from Washington, D.C. President Trump is set to sign his signature Megabill into law this afternoon, as he said his party is now united like never before. How both Republicans and Democrats are racing to define what it all means for the American people. Plus, state governments are trying to prepare for the real-world impacts of that legislation, including cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. We'll talk to a former governor to find out how states are getting ready. And new deadly assaults in the Russia-Ukraine war. Moscow launching its largest aerial attack on the city of Kyiv since the conflict began, just hours after President Trump said he wasn't happy with his call with Vladimir Putin. What it all means for any potential peacemaking. But we begin today with President Trump now just hours away from a defining moment of his second term. The president is expected to sign into law his so-called one big beautiful bill at about 5 p.m. Eastern today, on the July 4th holiday, just as he wanted. The president celebrated his legislative victory at an event in Iowa last night.
There could be no better birthday present for America than the phenomenal victory we achieved. With this bill, every major promise I made to the people of Iowa in 2024 became a promise kept. This bill includes the largest tax cut in American history, the largest spending cut in American history, the largest border security investment in American history.
While the president's bill does extend his tax cuts and boost spending, it also partially pays for it all with steep cuts to Medicaid, food assistance benefits, and clean energy funding. As lawmakers leave D.C. and return home for the holiday, they're bracing to face their constituents. Republicans will try to convince voters it's a good thing, while Democrats are ready to pounce on the adverse impacts of the legislation, especially on lower-income voters. All right, joining us now is NBC's Yamiche Alcindor and Julie Sirkin, reporting from Washington, D.C., Rena Shah, former senior GOP congressional advisor, and Megan Hayes, former special assistant to President Biden and director of message planning. Yamiche, I want to start with you. What more do we know about this afternoon's bill signing ceremonies? Any surprises to be expected? And what do you think we'll hear from the president?
Well, the president is really eager to take a big victory lap here. This is exactly what he wanted when he set this July 4th deadline for lawmakers to sign this one big, beautiful bill. And what the president really wanted to do was essentially gather people, gather supporters, gather families, gather members of the military, so that he can say, I'm keeping my promise to America and also keeping my promise to all of my supporters and people who put their trust in me. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the president says. Likely it's going to just be him celebrating and talking about different parts of the bill. The president has also been very clear that he believes this is going to be good for the U.S. economy. Take a listen to what he's been saying.
How much growth can the country expect from the one big
I think we're going to
bill?
get great growth. I think we'll have growth at record numbers. This is going to be something that's amazing. Economically, we're going to have the strongest country anywhere in the world. And the bill that we just got approved today was, think of that, all of those votes, 2 negative votes, but we had no Democrats, 2 negative votes in the Republicans out of all that. So I want to thank those great Republicans that voted to get it in.
Now, this bill really does underscore the power and the grip that President Trump has on the party. There were a lot of Republican lawmakers who were very critical of this bill, especially when it came to the Medicaid cuts and its impact on rural places and rural hospitals. But in the end, the president essentially said you can either vote for this bill or you can not have a political future, and we'll be primarying a challenger against you. And the lawmakers just caved and voted for this bill, except for, of course, those 2 in the House. The other thing to note here is that the president has been saying that this is going to be good for the economy and good for Americans, but there are critics of the bill who say that this is really going to hurt a lot of Americans. And the Congressional Budget Office that the White House has been attacking, but that is an independent agency that looks at bills that are passed by Congress, says something like 12 million Americans are going to lose health insurance because of this bill. And it's also going to add something like $3 trillion to the national debt. So there are a lot of people who are very worried about the consequences of this bill, but that's not stopping President Trump today and certainly down the line from praising it. Christina?
And Julie, as you just heard Yamiche talking about, even lawmakers who were critical of this bill, all but 2 of them, as we sat through yesterday on the air, voted for it. They now have to go back home to their constituents and justify voting for a bill that polling shows is not very popular and that they themselves will have criticized. How do you expect that to play out in both Republican and then Democratic districts as well?
Well, for Democrats, for example, I asked Leader Schumer last week, look, how are you going to seize this moment, especially as they try to redefine themselves in the Democratic Party after the November losses? And he told me we are going to be in every state, in every swing district, making sure that it's not just us, but it's the people reflected in what this legislation will hurt them in Medicaid cuts, in the SNAP benefits that you heard Yamiche there talking about, those other social safety net programs. On the flip side, it begs a question of what Republicans will do. Will they go out there and message on this bill, or will they sit on the sidelines? Well, according to sources I talked to yesterday, it's very clear that they are aware of the ramifications they face in the 2018 midterms after they passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. Those taxes, by the way, that the president wanted Republicans and they just extended and made permanent. I asked what they will do, and they told me, well, we ceded ground to Democrats back then. That's what they blame their losses on. This time they're going to go out and they're going to message individual pieces of the bill that there is good polling on, right? Not everything, because we know the Medicaid provisions, for example, poll terribly in this bill, but on those tax cuts, on the no tax on tips and overtime, though it's temporary, it is a campaign promise that Trump got Republicans to deliver on, and those are the things they are going to go out and message on. No tax on car loans, those kinds of provisions that my sources tell me, according to their polls, poll well with Americans. That's exactly what they're going to try to message here.
And Rena, you heard President Trump in that clip talking about the support he got at that event in Iowa, but on social media today, he also championed the fact that he got 218 Republicans to back this bill. And he spoke on how he views his hold on the party at that event yesterday in Iowa. Let's take a listen.
I think I have more power now. I do. You know, I could say, oh, gee, I don't know. I think I probably do, because we've had a great record of success. You know, my first term was very, very successful. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. I think we're going to blow it away this term. But, you know, we've proven certain things. And, yeah, I think probably it's got more gravitas, more power.
And I want to correct myself. That's the president at Joint Base Andrews, not at Iowa. Apologies. But I want to ask you, Rena, what does that power he was just referencing mean for these Republican lawmakers, almost all of whom are now tied to Trump as they face voters at home?
Well, Republican unity in this moment of the passage of the big, beautiful bill came at a cost. And it's one thing I think we really ought to see here is that Trump's arm twisting shows that he's the party's undisputed closer. And that's something that most people were not expecting at this point in his term. Look, Trump and Speaker Johnson, what they did was flip about a dozen Republican holdouts with late night calls and White House pressure, of course. And only two Republicans, Massey of Kentucky and Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, were the only no votes. But what Republicans see this as is Trump's mandate in action. That's what they've been saying that this big, beautiful bill is. But Elon Musk, his warning of fiscal responsibility, the irresponsibility seen here, really highlights what the Republican Party's capitulation is to big spending. That's also something we didn't see coming at this point. So many of us, it's been an acceleration to running up the national debt in this way to the tune of $4 trillion, as the Congressional Budget Office has put it. That's not very conservative. And so what I think these cracks do is really could splinter debt ceiling talks when they resurface.
And Megan, you know, the national debt is something that ironically Republicans criticized Democrats about when they were in the minority party. Now the opposite is true. That didn't seem to be a big motivator for voters, but health care could be different. And I'm wondering if Democrats see this as an opportunity to win back voters, what that's going to look like, what you think the messaging is going to be around that, and where the key battlegrounds you expect to be play out ahead of the midterms.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the healthcare message here is extremely strong. You see that in the polling already. You see that 2/3 of Americans don't like this bill and don't like what's in it. And I think Democrats have already seized on that opportunity and will continue to do so moving into the midterms. I think these swing districts, you saw it with Fitzpatrick in Pennsylvania. He is in a very, in Bucks County, a swing district in Pennsylvania. And I think that he took a vote that could preserve his political future to win against a Democrat if he chooses to run for re-election, which is, to be seen thus far. But, Democrats are going to go out there strong in these swing districts and really play up the fact that the Republican Party chose Donald Trump and to be a puppet for Donald Trump rather than to protect their benefits for the middle class, protect healthcare, protect SNAP benefits, protect rural hospitals. So I think that Democrats have a strong message moving forward into the midterms right now.
And Rita, I mean, obviously these Republican holdouts, all but two, ultimately decided that loyalty to President Trump was more important to their voter base than the concerns they had within this bill about the debt, about cuts to Medicaid. The New York Times article actually describes it as they, quote, savaged their party's bill, then they voted for it. How do you go home to voters and explain that behavior? Because it seems to me voters, if they are especially loyal to Trump, could be angry that they questioned him at all. And if voters are looking for them to stick to their guns, they didn't do it. So does this put these Republicans in an extremely difficult position?
Well, this mega bill's cuts really could hand Democrats the 2026 midterm weapon that they're looking for, that they've been seeking for the past few months. So I think Republicans ought to brace for impact, because when they go home and talk to voters, they're not going to be calling this a tax and spend bill. They're just going to be calling it a tax bill that extended Trump's 2017 tax cuts. They're going to try to downplay its impact and not say it's as far reaching as it is. And I come from an era in the House some decade and a half ago where back then we were decrying how these big bills do too much all the same. And I know so many Republican members within the House chamber are going to sleep at night with that same sentiment on their mind. But, you know, I mean, this is no joke here. I can't overstate the impact of $930 billion of Medicaid and SNAP cuts. What that does is gives Democrats the most potent rallying cry to paint Republicans not just as callous, but as essentially as switch hitters, you know, and that is something that is not a gift to Republicans. But Trump doesn't care. This was about him sticking it to the Democrats and showing party unity, trying to show that they're decisive, in the face of a moment where Democrats look like they're pretty fractured. I think what also you'll hear Republican leaders try to argue is that this funds growth and really changes America's economic footprint globally. And they'll also try to make it about security, because it is. It's about immigration reform. It's about tax cuts. And it's also about health care. So I think what more party leaders need to do is listen to Elon Musk. And I can't believe I'm saying that. But his critique of this really undisciplined spending is really important in this moment. And I think it also tries to foreshadow that voters may try to punish the party if the safety nets vanish. So that's a really big risk here that the Republicans took. And the midterms are going to test whether Trump's gamble pays off or backfires. That's really it.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're going to want to take your advice on listening to Elon Musk, but I do understand your point there. And Megan, to that end, progressive Democrats are planning to hold what they're going to call accountability summer events targeting Republican members who voted for the bill. Congressman Robert Garcia spoke about his own counter-messaging efforts, talking to Meet the Press Now. I want you to take a listen.
We're going to be out there campaigning across the country. We're going to be going to town halls. I'm going to spend a lot of my break going to Republican districts, as I've been doing, and communicating how harmful this bill actually is. And it's not just us saying it. It's the independent analysts. It's the Congressional Budget Office. It's governors, including governors in red states, that are actually saying don't actually harm Medicaid.
Democrats are really trying to position themselves to hit hard on this Medicaid spending cuts to be kind of the flashpoint that it seems like they're going to define 2026 around. If so, is that a good bet, or is there a risk of playing their hand too far here?
No, I don't think so. I think the one thing that they have going for them is you have all these Republican members who went out and criticized the bill for weeks on end, saying, we're not voting for this. We're going to protect your Medicaid. We're going to protect your SNAP benefits, and then went ahead and voted for it. So they're going to use their own words against them, which is more damaging than just Democrats going out there saying they cut all of these things. They're going to use their own representatives' words, and they're going to show the people and their constituents in these districts that are swing districts what their members voted for and what their elected representatives voted for. And I think that is what the harm is here. They're going to be able to show, you know, you can talk about these big cuts and big spending, but that's really abstract to people. But when you start cutting things like healthcare and SNAP benefits, that hits people in their own pockets, and that resonates with people. And Democrats are going to be able to use that, and they just have to keep the drumbeat going. 18 months is a long time, so it's going to be an uphill battle for Democrats, but they've been really, really coalesced around this message and really united. So I think that they're going to be able to do it.
And Julie, yesterday, you know, when Republicans had this big moment of getting this huge legislation passed, there was a bit of a split screen, because you also had Leader Hakeem Jeffries giving this record-breaking 8-hour speech. I'm wondering who you think, as Democrats go forward with this line of attack, who's going to be their best messenger on this?
I'm not sure Democrats even know who their best messenger is going to be from Capitol Hill, but it's very clear yesterday in what Jeffries was able to deliver in breaking that record, in more importantly for Democrats, sort of captivating the attention, putting the spotlight back on their message. You know, Jeffries spent a very long time on the floor intentionally because he called out stories, personal stories of Americans who are on these social safety net benefits, from food stamps to Medicaid and what have you, clean energy, even the businesses that rely on those tax credits, especially for solar and wind, going state by state, really sharing those stories. I think that kind of message, and we heard it from Cory Booker when the House first passed this one big beautiful bill, their version of that, how effective holding the floor was in that moment for Booker. By the way, a little moment that viewers might not know about, Jeffries was actually in the Senate chamber watching Cory Booker as he delivered that speech. So I think this strategy is going to be very interesting. I think it's exactly right. 18 months is a very long time. We know that people have very short attention spans, especially when it comes to news cycles. But what they will pay attention to, of course, is the impact they have because of this bill, whether it's good, as Republicans are trying to message it, for those middle-class families, for corporations, for everybody that they gave tax breaks to, including waitresses or people that rely on tips, or whether it's bad for the rural hospitals, for the underserved communities, for people who rely on Medicaid, 12 nearly million of them who the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, predicts will be knocked off of this. So I think this is a big test for Democrats. It is also a potential pivotal moment for them as they try to regain their footing. But certainly Republicans are not going to cede ground. They're going to message too, and we'll see who wins out.
All right, Yamiche Alcindor, Julie Sirkin, Rena Shaw, and Megan Hayes, thank you so much for joining us, especially on a holiday. And in 90